former stockbroker, Borkum also holds the position of chairman of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. This is Captains of Industry. Humphrey, thanks very much for your time this afternoon.
It's a pleasure. It's nice to meet you.
You've been associated with the JSE for some 40 years and you've
Correct.
lived through 5 bull markets, 5 bear markets. I'm going to ask you to give us some insight into these trends and whether you can share a little of your experience with us. What's behind, in your opinion, a bull and a bear trend? Is it all just emotion at the end of the day, triggered by an event, be it the subprime crisis that triggered the recent global financial crisis and the downturn in the US markets, or if we go back to 2008, the dot-com bubble bursting?
I'm absolutely convinced that it is human emotions. Normally the trend starts naturally. There's either a bear trend when people think the market's overinflated, start selling and the market starts coming down, and that catches on and people start panicking and you get a really serious bear market, whereas maybe a normal correction would have been enough. So, similarly in a bull market, the market's inexpensive, people start buying shares, investing in the market, and then get carried away. And usually you see the same sort of trends in both the bull and bear markets repeating themselves every time it happens.
Do you have any idea where we are at the moment? There's much debate as to whether we are still in a bull trend and have just seen a slight correction on the market, or whether we potentially are going to see a heavy sell-off and a fall into a severe bear market on equities.
I think we've seen the correction in the bear market. I think we're probably at the bottom of the bear market. I don't think we're coming out of it in a hurry now. I think that there's still too much concern about what's going to happen in both the USA and Europe, and that's got to sort itself out before we start another bull market here.
What do you think will unfold in the USA and in Europe? Do you think that the sovereign debt crisis is going to spread across the Atlantic and we're going to face a very similar situation in the US?
I don't really think so. I don't. I think that that the US is probably getting its house in order now. The US is going to come out of its problems. Europe has got a bit of a different problem, and I think that we're going to see, I'm convinced there's going to be more pressure on various countries in Europe before Europe comes out of its problems.
And South Africa, where do we stand given what is unfolding on the global stage?
We can't act in isolation. So we've got to wait until both the USA and Europe correct themselves, until they're out of their problems. Europe is too big a trading partner of ours for us to ignore, and the world can't ignore the USA.
For the JSE All Share, we had a huge futures closeout recently where we saw a record number of trades.
Sure.
Post 200,000 trades went through the bourse on the day, and it was about 20 billion rand in market value going through the bourse. What does it mean for the layperson? Does it mean that the trend is that the JSE is firmly on a course to success?
I think it means that the market at the moment is fairly priced. And I think that we're forming a very firm base, and when we do enter a bull market, we've got a long way ahead of us in a bull market. I certainly don't think that was an indicator that we've got another bear market ahead of us. I think that was an indicator that there is confidence in this market, and confidence that we're going to start slowly improving.
Looking at the all-time highs hit on the JSE All Share, 33,310, that was on the 23rd of May 2008. We then fell to a level of just below 18,000 in March 2009.
Sure.
Do you think we're going to remain in the middle ground, this 25,000 and above level, or do you think we can go back to the sub 18,000 point?
I think we're going to stay closer to the middle ground for the time being. I really think that 18,000 level was the sell-off in a bear market. I think we're over that, and I think we're consolidating ourselves ahead of the next bull market. But I'm not saying that the next bull market is going to be tomorrow.
Can the JSE make a difference to trade on the African continent, in your opinion?
I'm absolutely sure we can, because I know how much we've invested in building an infrastructure here. And I don't believe that Africa should go and reinvent the wheel with stock exchanges. Unfortunately, there seems to be a suspicion that maybe we big brother, or maybe we are not nice people to be associated with. We do have a problem convincing the rest of Africa that it's a good idea to join us in a friendly business relationship.
Ultimately, do you believe that that friendly business relationship will prevail? Will people stand convinced of the merits of being associated with the JSE?
I'm sure of it, because it just makes such good commercial sense.
The companies that are listed on the JSE, obviously we did see a dearth of listings over the financial crisis. We have just seen Life Healthcare Group coming to the bourse. Do you think we're going to see the trend picking up now again?
Sure. And I spoke to you and I said that early on, I said to you that you see the same sort of cycles in a bull or a bear market. And in a bull market, you see new listings coming to the market slowly, and eventually they start coming in a flood. And unfortunately, that when that flood happens, that's a signal that we might be nearing the end of the bull market. We're not anywhere near a flood now. We're just starting, and we will see new listings increasing.
What's your opinion on dual listings? Those companies that are listed not only on the local bourse, but are listed either in London or in New York. Is it necessary to have a double listing?
I think it helps the companies in many ways, because it increases their spread of ownership, and therefore increases the number of people who they can turn to raise fresh capital if they want to. And I think in many cases it makes a lot of sense.
China is the savior of the global economy, it appears, with the high growth rates coming out of that territory. And it's certainly a boost for South Africa, given the fact that we've got so many industrial metals. We are key on the resource front. Do you believe in the China story?
I've been to China several times, I think 3 or 4 times, and I think it's a great country. I don't really understand the country. I don't understand the way the people work. The last time I was in China, there was a meeting of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, and I was watching it on the TV, and a lady who's quite a senior woman in the hierarchy in the Communist Party arrived in a Rolls Royce. And I didn't really see how that could gel with being a communist. So I don't understand their system very well, but I think it's a great country, and I admire their determination and their will to succeed.
Humphrey, there's also much debate about emerging markets versus the developed world, and that the next decade belongs to the emerging market environment. Do you buy into that rationale?
I think the next decade is going to have to take more and more cognizance of the emerging markets. I don't think it belongs to the emerging market. I don't think you can dismiss established markets like Europe or the United States at all. But certainly the emerging markets are going to play a bigger role.
You've been chairman of the JSE for some 10 years now. What are the changes that you've seen over the last decade?
When I became chairman, the JSE had just come out of a period when it was really a club, a members club owned and run by the members. In those days, I think that we might have had 1 or 2 female members. We certainly didn't have any black members then. We might have had 1, sorry, I can think of 1 black member. And we certainly were not a listed company. There was the exchange was owned and run by its members. Russell Loubser brought in a new team of people who changed that and turned it into a business, and I think correctly so. I don't think stockbrokers were the right people to run their own businesses and the stock exchange at the same time.
Let's talk about your position as country executive for Merrill Lynch, a subsidiary now of the Bank of America. Take us through what happened with the financial crisis, the fallout, and the subsequent buying of Merrill Lynch by the Bank of America. It must have shaken up your team somewhat.
It did shake up the team, because I think if you think back, certainly what came out after Bank of America took over Merrill Lynch was not very pleasant. It was a bit unnerving to hear that Merrill had lost the sort of money that Merrill had lost. And also there was an air of concern. Who were these new people, Bank of America? We didn't know them. They didn't know us. Were they going to change things? Were they going to dramatically change things? Were they going to be good for us or not? They didn't change things. They encouraged us to grow the business. I think that the vast majority of the people in South Africa who were here at the time when Bank of America took over the business are still here. And I think that speaks volumes for the sort of confidence that Bank of America had in what we were doing. And I think Bank of America is going to be good for us in the future.
What's the level of interaction between the Bank of America executives and the Merrill Lynch executives at the moment here on the ground?
We answer to Bank of America in London, and we deal with them constantly, all the time.
What's the future for Merrill Lynch in South Africa?
I think Bank of America support us. I think that we're going to grow our business cautiously, but we're going to grow the business, and we've got a very, very good parent behind us, a strong parent. So I think the business is going to grow.
And do you have your eye on the rest of the African continent, or will you remain truly South African?
I think we would like to do business with the rest of Africa. We'd be silly not to. The rest of Africa is there, and to the extent that we can do business with the rest of Africa, we will do it.
Are you investigating that strategy as we speak?
We do look at it. We look at it constantly. There's nothing new. We've constantly been looking at it.
Is the worst over for investment banks, or are we still going to see more snakes coming out of the closet?
I think the worst is over. I really do. I think that the Americans took very bold steps to make sure that they understood exactly how bad the problems were. And it's an ongoing process with the Fed, that the Fed continues to look at all banks very, very closely.
And of course I have to ask you about investment banking salaries. There's been so much debate about whether the investment bankers have been overpaid to this point. Do you think that scenario will change going down the line? Are we going to see pressure on those pay slips, or will they continue to be rewarded handsomely?
I think it can only change if you bring in a worldwide law that everybody can only be paid whatever you call it, $100,000. Because if you bring in a rule that says that if you work in London, the maximum you can be compensated is $100,000, everybody will move to Switzerland. And if you bring the rule in Switzerland, everybody will move to China. So
the key, obviously, problem that you're facing is how do you retain talent if there isn't a level playing field across the board?
Correct.
Do you think, though, that we will see some kind of worldwide standard applied to investment banking fees?
I think with transparency, I think that there's. I wouldn't be surprised to see that more and more people are going to have to disclose the top salaries that they pay in their businesses, and I think that there's going to be a probably public pressure to pay properly for the right jobs. So if you're going to pay somebody $5 million US, that person you better be able to justify why you're paying that.
So measurables need to be in place for
Correct.
people to be held accountable for
Correct.
their salaries. At the moment, what is happening in the investment banking arena? Are transactions coming back online? Because there certainly must have been a dearth of transactions throughout the financial crisis.
I get a little email about once or twice a week from London, which is a summary of various transactions that have taken place worldwide. And yes, definitely, investment banking transactions are coming back. They not in floods, but they are coming back every week. It seems to me that there are more and more things that have taken place around the world than there were last week.
Who, in your mind, symbolizes the kind of leadership South Africa needs at the business level?
I think Bobby Godsall is somebody who I've known Bobby for many, many years, and I think he's somebody that I always looked to as a chap of integrity. He had strong leadership, and he wasn't somebody you could push around lightly. I admired him. I do admire him, and I think to myself sometimes, what would Bobby do in this situation? And I hope that sometimes I do the same thing that he would have done.
What makes a good leader, in your opinion? What are the traits that need to be firmly in place?
I think you've got to understand people, try and understand people. I think you've got to listen to people. You've got to seek advice. You've got to try and understand why people are doing things. And in the end, you've got to make up your own mind, and you've got to stick by it.
Are you good at delegating?
Not particularly good. I try and delegate, but I like to check up afterwards that what I asked to be done has been done. But I try and delegate properly.
Is that because you ultimately don't trust the people that you're delegating to? Or
No,
is it an
because
issue
I'm
that you feel
curious.
that perhaps you can do the job better?
No, I'm curious. I always want to know what's going on.